Chris, a former expert smuggler, now leads a clean life with a family and business of his own. But when his brother-in-law fails to complete a drug delivery, Chris is forced to plan a new smuggling operation.
You know what's gonna happen if you don't pay. You know the rules, right?
When he discovers he's been double-crossed, Chris must fight for his life and protect his family. In Contraband. Contraband, the new action thriller starring Mark Wahlberg. We've all just seen it. Sean, take it away.
I will. So Contraband is actually a remake of an Icelandic film that starred an actor named Baltasar Kormákur.
Who directed this movie.
And it's another in the long line of One Last Job movies.
Right.
Basically, Mark Wahlberg has to come out of retirement in order to go on a smuggling operation because his family, specifically his brother-in-law, is in trouble. So my major problem with Contraband was that it suffered from this idea of the ticking clock, which is, the screenplay modicum where you set up a time limit where something has to get accomplished in a certain amount of time or else all else fails. This movie seems to have about 12 of them.
A lot of clocks.
At least, where it's just one ticking clock upon ticking clock upon ticking clock, and every single time they succeed within just the right amount of time at the last second.
It's incredibly predictable, but it's fun in its predictability. You could sit back and just grin and just laugh at how goofy this film is because it's not nuanced, it's not subtle. We have more aerial shots of the city than we do have of our characters. It has its own very specific, distinct style, but it's somewhat enjoyable. I'm not going to knock it too hard.
Yeah, while I really enjoyed the double crosses and the plot twists in this movie, there were so many moments where it crossed my suspension of disbelief that I just gave up by the middle of the movie. I knew that everyone would be successful in everything they went to do, that no one would ever get hurt, and that there would be a wonderful Hollywood happy ending. So let's talk about the performances in this movie. I think Mark Wahlberg did a good job. He plays pretty much the same character that he plays in The Shooter, but he does carry the action, and you do feel like he was this really intense, tough guy at one point, and that's part of the conceit of this film is that he's trying to get away from being a smuggler, and he's a family man, and he has an honest business.
I know what I'm doing, all right? Will you just trust me? Please. Nothing's gonna happen.
But the guy I really loved was Giovanni Ribisi. Uh-oh, Liz is making a face. Okay. I really like, you're making a face too? I'm going to just make my point anyway. The hell with both of you. I really like the fact that he played this tough guy, but every once in a while you could see that he was really a frightened little kid on the inside, and that revealed his inner character.
You know how many passes I gave your brother in his day?
Yeah, I hated my brother. This ain't your world anymore, man. You're a tourist. You can't trade on status you don't have.
So Giovanni Ribisi, in a previous film of his, The Rum Diary, uses this very strained, nasally voice that was unsuccessful in that movie, yet he carries it over to this film, and it's incredibly irritating, and it doesn't do much to his performance.
It's almost like he's become unhinged a little bit, like the director can't reel him back in. I mean, he showed such promise early on in his career with films like Saving Private Ryan, and in this movie, it feels like he's in a different planet, if not a different movie.
Okay. But we liked Ben Foster.
I love Ben Foster.
Tell us about it.
I think Ben Foster, and everything that I've seen him in, he always rises above the material. And if you look at his performance in Mechanic and you look at his performance here, he's always really interesting, and he brings this likability to maybe characters that aren't so likable.
I could probably get us to buy money, no problem. No, I finally got something going. It's not going away, Chris.
Sebastian, want to share a little bit with us?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. How do you think?
You don't want to stick around?
I get far too emotional hearing that story.
Let's talk about the director. I don't feel like the movie had any real focus in terms of its directing. It didn't have a style. It felt like the camera was trying to find a place to be. Now, it is important to point out that the production values in this movie are top-notch. You really believe that a lot of time and thought were put into the action sequences and the execution of them.
I do have to say, though, it's not very visually dynamic. This film relies too heavily on previously established styles, and it doesn't really establish its own.
Well, I think we've dissected this movie quite enough. It's time to take it to a vote.
I found this film to be very amusing, but for the wrong reasons. Go see Haywire in the theaters, and for Contraband, stream it.
It has some decent moments, but it pales in comparison to some other movies of its genre, like Heat or even Mark Wahlberg's remake of The Italian Job, so I'm gonna have to say, skip it.
This is a well-crafted movie, undermined by the endless close calls. However, if you're a fan of the genre, it has some fine performances, and for that reason, I'm going to give it a stream it.
Well, it looks like that's 2 half tickets, which is a stream it for Contraband.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.